Howdy folks, welcome back. It is me, the Tank Commander again, and guess what? We are just 3 days away from my 2020 NCL Getaway cruise. That's right, 3 days. We are getting into the very single digits now, ladies and gentlemen. And today, as we know, we're coming back into the next part of the series of the most useless, pathetic, and obsolete tanks of World War II. So, what we're going to be doing is, we're going to be looking at something that most people have never even heard of. The only people that really have heard of this are people that are war gamers like me. So, ladies and gentlemen, what is it we have today? Well, here it is. Now, you're probably looking at this thing, and you're probably wondering, what in God's name is that? Now, some of you who don't play World of Tanks probably look at that and say, well, it looks like an M10 Wolverine tank destroyer. But then some of you are going to recognize that suspension looks like a Panther suspension. Well, this is what this is. This is known as the Ersatz Panther M10. Now what this is it's a converted vehicle that was meant for deception tactics. Now, what I'm going to say up front is, I'm going to leave the details about this tank in the description box below, because this is short and sweet about this tank. So, in World of Tanks, this is what's known as the Tier 7 German Premium Medium Tank, which frankly I think is a little lackluster nowadays, because in War Thunder they have the complete vehicle with the paint job, and they also forgot one thing. Right there. They forgot the muzzle brake on the Panther's gun. So, what is the story behind this tank? Well, if everybody knows about the German invasion of the Ardennes Forest, the Battle of the Bulge in December of 1944, the German invasion was known as Wacht am Rhein, which was Operation Watch on the Rhine, which was supposed to be a German invasion of the Ardennes Forest in Belgium, Luxembourg, and France, and then advance all the way up to the Belgian port of Antwerp, cutting the Allied forces in half. Well, what they needed was, they needed deception tactics. They needed to go behind American and Allied lines and completely cause chaos and whatnot. So what this was going to do was, they were going to be going in captured U.S. Army uniforms and captured U.S. Army vehicles. This is where the problem shows up, okay? To start off, the leader of this operation was by a German by the name of Otto Skorzeny. Anybody who follows the history books knows that this was the guy who led the famous glider assault to free Benito Mussolini from his solitary confinement in Italy. Otto Skorzeny was tasked with doing this deception tactic and making sure, doing things like seizing roadways, turning signs, and causing logistical mayhem for mainly the Americans. Now, the problem that this caused was, they needed American vehicles. The problem was, there were a very limited number of American captured vehicles that they could use. They wanted at least 10 Sherman tanks, of which they could only get 4, and only 2 of them were in serviceable, semi-serviceable condition, and that's where they got the problem from. To solve this problem, what they wanted to do was, they decided to soup up a Panther, a number of them. Sources say there were up to 10 of them, and they were to make them look like the M10 Wolverine, the American tank destroyer. They studied the Wolverine extensively to transform the Panther. So what they did was, they did a number of changes. To start off, you look on the front hull. This is not a regular Panther hull. In fact, I'll show you guys what a real Panther looks like. Alright, this is what a real Panther looks like. As you can see, it's got this highly sloped frontal hull with this little machine gun port here. What they did with the Ersatz Panther was, they added an extra hull plate on the front and steepened it to make it look like the M10 gun, or not gun, tank destroyer. And what they also did was they attached a little trap door to make use of the German machine gun, because you gotta remember that the M10 tank destroyer does not have a bow-mounted machine gun. Also, what they did was they extended this little aperture over the back of the Panther, because you have to realize these exhaust pipes here is what is another giveaway for a Panther. What they also did was they carved out things of sheet metal and put them around the sides and rear of the turret to make it look like a bustle and counterweight for the M10 tank destroyer. They also added this angled armor here, okay, to make it look like the M10's gun mantlet. What they also did was, if you look on the side, it also has a port for the coaxial machine gun. The M10 did not have this. Also, you look, in comparison to a regular Panther, they cut the German commander's hatch off and just welded two-door hatch on there. Basically, that meant that when the Panther went into use with this, the tank commander was completely blind when buttoned up. This was all for the deception tactic. Now, this is where the problem comes in, because another thing that they could not remove was the muzzle brake of the L70 gun to make it look like the 3-inch gun on the M10. And that was because if they didn't have the muzzle brake on the end of the gun, the L70 wouldn't necessarily work right. Now, another thing was they couldn't do anything about the Panther's suspension, okay? Because, well, there's nothing you can really do about that. Also, you have to understand, in comparison, the M10 is a lot smaller than the Panther. Now, this technically, although was still semi-convincing because they did this in the dark, I don't think a lot of people noticed until, like, they actually understood what was going on. But, so, it's a very interesting vehicle. But now here's where you're probably wondering, well, what's the deal with it? Well, the deal was only a few of these were found. I think probably 4 of them were found. 2 of them were in the vicinity of Malmedy. And because at least one of them was knocked out by a bazooka and its gun crashed into a cafe. Another one was found on the road, I think towards, St. Vith or something. And that was, I think, knocked out as well. The reason why they say that there are up to 10, they thought there were up to 10 of them, is because the numbers that they found were 4, 5, 7, and 10. Now, you're probably wondering, of course, War Thunder players know this is known as the War Crimes Tank. Now, you're probably wondering, why is that? Well, how it works is that according to military doctrine, if you are in an enemy's uniform and their vehicles, and just in them, that is just known as a ruse. Now, that's basically a deception. That's just short for a deception tactic. But the problem was, when these things were searched, they found hastily taken off American uniforms. Okay? And because these things saw action, because they're in U.S. Army markings, and they had U.S. Army uniforms on, that's illegal. It is a war crime to fight in your enemy's uniform. Okay, that's based on all military doctrine nowadays. So this tank is basically an illegal tank, the fact that it was used. Okay? That's the reason why it's a war crime tank. And that comes to the last part of our video. Was it useless? No. Was it obsolete? No, it was a Panther. It was pathetic. Okay? This was, in my opinion, and being an avid tank enthusiast, this was a pathetic excuse of trying to cause a deception tactic, because I think they could have done a lot more to try and help with this matter. I put no blame on Skorzeny because he was the one that was in charge of this. Okay? He couldn't do any better. But I think that designers could have done a lot more to try and come up with another deception tactic, because this one, I have to say was just downright pathetic. So that ends the video today, and ladies and gentlemen, we got 2 more picks to go, so make sure you guys vote. So here's what I'm thinking. If you guys comment, and I see that the comments haven't shown up, do me a favor. If you do manage to vote on this video, go to the About page of my YouTube channel and send me an email saying what your votes are, because that way you'll be able to get your votes in, and I'll be able to do this. And hey, that's it for today. So, I'll catch you guys tomorrow with the next tank vote. Good luck.